Alright, we're going to finish up this little thing here. So we're now going to talk about Gilded Age presidents and politics. The first thing I'm going to have you list these people. There's only a couple here, but there's some other ones I want to get to as well. We have presidents of the Gilded Age, and during the Gilded Age, it can be argued that presidents of the United States had less power than the business leaders. Policies and actions of the U.S. government during the Gilded Age gave corporations the freedom to do whatever they wanted, leading to an industrial boom. And for this reason, nobody remembers these guys. They're called the Forgotten Presidents. And so we have James Garfield, Chester Arthur, Grover Cleveland, and Benjamin Harrison. Now, the interesting thing is Mr. Cleveland here is actually going to be elected twice, and he's the only president to serve non-consecutive terms. He was elected in 1884 and again elected in 1892. And so we'll look at that going forward, if you will, okay? And so there you have that. Okay, you're right. So there are those guys, the Forgotten President, Garfield, Arthur, Cleveland, and Harrison. Now there's some other stuff we're going to get about them here in a second. Now, what made these men so different is that from Andrew Johnson and going forward, there existed something called the spoils system, and the old saying goes, to the victors go the spoils. In other words, you can do what you want. Now, the spoils system basically meant that if you elected this man, he would literally start throwing out jobs, as he's doing right on the piece of paper, to his friends and supporters, even if they can't do the job, correct? And this is just absurd, is it not? You want someone who can do the job. Now, this actually cost one president his life, and it wasn't because he wasn't a good president. It was the fact that this guy understood the spoils system to be something it wasn't. All right, so the spoils system, again, is giving your friends jobs rather than having them go and do something else. Now, there also existed a concept that is called patronage. Patronage is very similar to spoils system, kind of different because it's not your friends basically, but if someone came and asked you for a job on the street, you would give them a job. Now with these two things going forward, we go and meet our first forgotten president, James Garfield. Now, James Garfield, innocently enough, was going to go on these, tours or whatever, and a man came up to him and said, I voted for you, Mr. Garfield. I would like a job. Mr. Garfield said, I don't have a job to give you. And he said, very well, I'll take your life. And he shot him. Killed him. This man's name is Charles Gittiaud. Here he is. In a political cartoon that says, an office or your life. I'll spell Gittiaud, you can get it there. And so the idea is that patronage and spoils system can really ruin people, because Mr. Garfield had no idea who this man was. But he felt that since he voted for him under patronage, right, he could go and ask him for a job. Now, the problem is he didn't have a job to give, correct? Now, it is for this reason that Senator Pendleton will enact a Civil Service Reform Act. And it's called the Civil Service Reform Bill. And they said it would crush people, right? Because people couldn't be there. And so what did they want to do? The Civil Service Reform Act, or Pendleton, they use them simultaneously, is where you're going to base people's elections into powerful positions on merit rather than who you know. Get rid of the good old boy system, right? It also set up what is called the Civil Service Commission. You have to go take a test, and you have to do well. If you do well, you go put in this database, and they can pick from the database who they wish. But if you don't take the test, you can't get in. So you thought, oh, gee, let's see. When I get done with school, there'll be no more big stakes test. Wrong. Okay? So that is the Civil Service Commission. All of these things together, again, go back to the Gilded Age that Mark Twain talked about. These men, these forgotten presidents that we talked about of Garfield, Arthur, Cleveland, and Harrison, they weren't necessarily bad, but they didn't do anything to stop the corruption. They just kind of said, do what you want, I'm the president, and just keep me in the loop. And that can't happen, okay? Now, so there's that. Now, what I need you to do here, I need you to explain what presidents were considered to be forgotten and why. I went through that with you. Explain the spoils systems and why it needed to be reformed. Explain the purpose of the Civil Service Commission. And we'll come back and we'll look at some other things we need to hear with the Gilded Age politics and presidents.